who don't have it. Young, black, and gifted, talking the whole package. Magic, magic, lights, camera, action. You are now witnessing the power of black magic. Black magic. You are now witnessing the power of black magic.
G'day everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all well. Today we've got another online analysis video. So I've got 4 different matches here versus a player who was around in the Discord. They came, asked for a few games, and we had a bit of a play around. Now these were from a little while ago, but the player had already seen the beginner's tutorial and they already had some matches, kind of warm up and learn the ropes of the game. So they were still a beginner player, but they knew moderately what they were doing and had a bit of experience with the middle game as well. So we're going to go through, have a look at a few of these games. I'm going to point out a few tips and tricks that'll help you, and a few different mistakes here and there that will help improve your game. Now in the opening, you want to make sure you get your home gens built, and you also want to do the walls and then the gens, and you also want to make sure that you fill the top one first. Now you'll notice here that after we go mid and place these 2 blocks, you then want to go for one of the side lanes and protect these 2 home places. You also want to make sure you put 2 walls on one side and then go to the other side, because if you do 1 and 1, that gives your opponent the opportunity to get in and steal one of these extra spots. So it's important to make sure you put 2 and 2 on each of the sides. You'll also notice that we put this one before this one. Reason being is because that's somewhat closest to your opponent compared to these 2 blocks. So you're trying to get this before they could possibly get in and steal that spot as well. Yes, they could come in and steal the one behind it, but that technically 2 extra blocks that they would have to walk to do that is often enough time for you to either react and take that spot before them, or you can trade the block and you will get back to that spot quicker, or you can counter, often by either pushing their lane if they don't have a block there, or you can push on the other side. As you can notice here, there's no block here. You'll also see that they've decided to put walls on each of these spots, which is usually the safest bet to begin with, and you'll obviously always have enough energy for that. Now, when I set up my final one at the top here, I usually put a gen here, because it's actually closer than a wall block if you're working at the top, and you'll always have enough energy for that. So it means later you won't have to go through and replace it, which is what Pigg spends time doing now. So the less time you have to swap things out, the better, but you want to make sure you get them set up first. You'll also notice that Pigg actually went back and sold a block that he just replaced. I'll show that again. This block here. Now, your objective in the opening is to get these set up first, then get your gens and your lasers in, and connect the top and bottom lane to your base. So instead of selling the block, which you don't really need right now because you have energy coming in, it's better to place them in one of these 4 spots to make sure that you're beginning to set up. Otherwise you're just going to have to buy it again later anyway. As you can see there, I replaced the middle gen and then brought that wall down the bottom. Now it doesn't matter top or bottom which one you connect really, but in terms of these 2 spots here, if you want to choose one of these spots to place a wall, it's better to place it on the one furthest back. Now you could argue that your opponent could come in and place this one because it's closest to their side, but it doesn't matter that much. But what you'll see in one of the later games is that if your opponent gets to block this spot right in front of your gen, it's really hard to destroy it. You have to remove your gen and put a laser there, which means you're basically wasting 2 energy. But if I have this one here and they put a block just here, then I can just replace this wall with a laser, and I'm technically not gaining any energy, but I'm not losing any either. So it's always best to try and put this block here first before this one. And again, you'll notice I'm placing these on the back ones first. It's not the biggest deal if they come in and block either of these spots, because again, it's easy to destroy and you can always build around it. And you can see here, now I am fully set up. So I have top and bottom lane connected to base, I have my 3 gens, and I have my 3 lasers. So Pigg is just about to get his final lasers in as well as his gens, but he still has all these 4 spots that he would need to fill to get fully set up. And based on basically all the walls that Pigg has sold throughout this match, he would have been able to use those to fill these holes. So that would have made that a lot quicker, but you can also tell that I have an extra block on each one of these lanes, which is really handy for the middle game, where we start to use a super. And because I can just replace one of these walls with another laser to make a super, that means I won't be replacing my gen. So I won't be wasting this extra energy. But if Pigg was to say super on either the top or bottom lane, once he gets set up, then he would have to remove a gen and create a super. So you're really starting to lose 2 energy just to create a super, and there's more blocks you have to destroy. And here you'll see I have gone and blocked the furthest most spot right in front of Pigg's gen. So again, this is really hard to destroy efficiently, and it also takes a while to build around it if you were to do that as well. Now, because I'm fully set up, the next thing I want to do is create a super. And you either want to super the top lane or the bottom lane. Now, if everything was symmetrical, it wouldn't really matter which one. Technically, the laser is closer to the bottom lane, so you might want to do that. But because I've placed this wall in my opponent's top lane, it's going to be very difficult, or it's going to take them a long time to set up their own super here. So because of that, I don't really need to worry about my top setup being destroyed at all. So what I can actually do is I can super the bottom lane instead, because I know that I'll be able to super bottom lane and destroy these blocks earlier than they will super, and I don't have to worry about top things. Now you notice here, when the super was getting set up, the wall that I replaced my laser with, I kept on me. And the reason why is that once this super had destroyed just one laser, I can move my super forward, and behind it, I can replace the wall. So now I have all of these 4 spots completely filled, and my laser will continue activating. Once I've done this, I want to just replace this back laser with a gen, so I can continue my attack. Now, even if Pigg had another laser here, you only need to super until you can get these 4 spots. The reason being is that you get an extra gen, so you get an extra income, and they lose an income, because they can't maintain this gen here because there's a laser, so they'll lose 1 income, and they'll have to put a laser here just to stop this one. So they're technically losing 2 energy, and I'm gaining an energy. So this is why you only need to push this far. And taking 1 more block doesn't really do anything. So when you super aside, this is as much as you need to gain. Now you'll also notice Pigg is destroying my home connection here, which is somewhat the weakest point in your whole position. Now it is an option, however you'll see in one of the other games, is that it's really easy just to block this. And you'll also notice that it's also using an energy, so they have very little income when they are doing this. The other way that you can actually take an offensive advantage from your opponent doing this, especially if it's on a side that you've won, you'll notice here that I have 3 gens and I just have 3 lasers. So I'm attacking all 3 of these lanes, and one of them is actually attacking base, which is obviously really important, and one of them is attacking their bottom lane. So it's disrupting all their connections, all their economy. So it's really hard to defend. At this point, it's pretty difficult for Pigg to come back. He does still have a fair bit of energy in the bank, but he doesn't have any income. So what he'll have to do is he'll have to replace both of his lasers with walls, and then he'll probably have to set up a super, either probably bottom lane, because that's where I have my most advantage. But you'll see that it would be really hard to get in here with these extra 2 lasers here. And that's the other thing too. Because there's really no room for him to get in and replace this laser at the bottom, I'm just going to keep destroying this. And I can always maneuver myself all throughout this. I can move blocks around, I can move the lasers. And it's basically just a death trap waiting to happen. So again, pretty much same setup, but Pigg should move this wall 1 more forward. Now, technically it doesn't take any extra time. And you'll notice here that I'm actually on the other side of the map. So if Pigg's wall here is going in front of it, then it won't really matter too much. But let's say if I was setting up this at the top, with this wall here, I could, instead of putting it behind like I will here, I could move it up this one space. And if Pigg doesn't react with this wall by putting it in my own spot back here, and instead either stuffs around or places it behind or tries to move something, then I would get the advantage in that lane. Again, want to move it one more forward instead. Especially here, because he decided to put that wall one more back. If I was either paying attention or I saw it, or I was just getting ready to go bottom lane anyway, then I definitely could have won this spot and then won bottom lane. The other thing too, I mentioned before that I like to put a gen at the top. You usually want to utilize a gen as soon as you place it, because I could go top, middle or bottom lane, but because I have a gen at the top, if I go anywhere else, it's just wasting standing there, so it doesn't even really need to be there. So you can either bring in an early laser to try and destroy this block before your opponent can react and do anything with it, or you can connect it to base really early, so you can start getting extra income. So now you start to have a lot more options to what you want to do. And again, any walls you're replacing in here, it's better to build your foundations rather than sell them, which is what Pigg keeps doing. And again, my foundations are fully set up. I have 3 gens, 3 lasers, and I have the extra block here as well. And unlike last game, Pigg has 1 extra block here. So again, if he just didn't sell them, he could get both of these set up, and on one of the lanes he might get an extra wall here, which is better when you start making supers. So again, now that the start is fully set up, you want to go and super somewhere. Either top or bottom lane, typically. So again, you're seeing Pigg opting for attacking my home base connections. But you'll notice here how quick and easy it is for me to just block them with walls. And I could do this forever. So that whole time, while Pigg had the 2 lasers there, he had no income in his base, whereas I had 2. So I could just wait there all day and I'll get a full base of energy while he won't make any progress. And in fact, I'm actually reinforcing these connections while also gaining energy. So it's good for, say, against beginners if they don't pay attention to it, and if you can manage to get your own block in there. But typically it's not a great idea. It's a possible option if someone has a super there. That's a little bit different, but typically you don't want to do that. So again, now you want to go and super somewhere. Another note too is if you have a full base of energy, basically at any time, you always want to super something. Because if your base is full, even if you're gaining income, you can't store anymore. So there's no point of having this energy if it's not being used. And the best way to use it is usually to use a super. Now you could try and do some offense, you could aim for their base, you could aim for some snipes, that works too, but you typically want to do a super so that you can actually gain ground and get a proper advantage over your opponent. Now of course there's lots of different strategies you could use, different ideas, but all of them will have positives and negatives, and there'll be a main method for going about and using strategy at this point in the game. And you'll notice the base is actually getting slightly low. It's only about maybe 1/7 of the way through, but over an entire match, if that was my focus, is just to do base damage, then it would, over time, slowly deteriorate. Again, now Pigg has a full base of energy and 2 income, so he really wants to super somewhere. Doesn't really matter where, you could do top, bottom or middle, but typically top or bottom is better. Now you'll notice here that I've actually gone for mid, because I've slowly made my way up. So again, Pigg has a full base of energy, so he really wants to super somewhere. In this case, he can't super mid, because I have my own super there. So what he'll want to do is completely block everything in front of it. So he'll probably want to move these 2 walls down. And if you don't try and fill immediately in front of my laser, all I'm going to do is push this forward. So you want to make sure you wall exactly in front of it. Now his super, you want to do this in the lane, so either bottom lane or top lane. And you want to do it where I have my super connected. Now in this case, I actually have it connected both lanes. So this would be pretty tricky because you'd kind of have to super both lanes. But I've made this decision easy by disconnecting the bottom from the super. So Pigg now has filled in the spots, which are great. So he really wants to super top lane now. And in my position, I would be wanting to bring in a gen, maybe bring in some walls, and I would want to push this forward as much as possible. When you super mid, it's the exact same as supering either top or bottom. You want to get these 4 spots. So gen, wall, gen, and a laser. That way you get 2 energy for yourself and your opponent doesn't get an energy. And you also want to make sure you have both of these lasers shooting in adjacent lanes. The reason why you don't want to just keep a super here firing is that supers are actually bad for offense. You usually only want to use a super to destroy an opponent's laser, because they could just continue bringing walls in and that would completely stop the super laser. And this is actually wasting 3 energy while it's doing this. So very inefficient to use a super for offense. Again, Pigg still hasn't set up a super and still pretty much has a full base of energy. So again, block in front, super in the lane where my super is connected. You'll notice here that Pigg has opted to try and super just above mid. It is an option for trying to attack the base, but as you can see, I can just fill in walls and that'll usually just waste energy, and my super is still going. So again, wall mid, super in the lane where my connection is, and as you can see, their base is getting pretty low now, so the game's pretty much over. Now, even though I don't have any income coming in, I can basically keep this super going forever. But in my case, you would want to push this mid forward, replace it with gens and lasers, disconnect from one of the sides or the base, and then super either top or bottom. So we've got 2 more matches. And you'll notice here, I was a little bit ahead of Pigg in the opening because I set up my gens quicker than they did. So what I opted to do, instead of placing my wall here like I normally do, I pushed it 1 forward. Now, if you can win either of these 2 spots from your opponent and win your 2 spots, then you can basically win mid. So it's very quick thinking of Pigg to actually mirror what I did, because that means that I can't safely get these 2 spots. So now what I want to do is I either want to win these 2 spots so I can get a gen and a laser in, or these 2 spots. So it's kind of like these couples or these pairs that you want to go for. And I also mainly want to make sure I win this center spot, because if Pigg wins it, then Pigg's going to have a gen and a laser here. So this is probably the main spot that I want to protect, but it's also good to protect your own home gen. So Pigg was quick enough to get this far spot, which is the one I was going for, but now it would be better to go to this middle spot. And you notice I actually left it, so Pigg really should have put this wall in mid, because in that case they would most likely have actually won mid. And again, you'll notice that I've begun to actually set up my sides, but I've gone 1 for each of the lanes. So Pigg should really use this opportunity to take advantage of at least one of the lanes, and if not, try and win both of them. Because within that time, he'll get enough energy once he connects these to base to actually super back mid, even though I've mainly won it. So if you were behind in this case, that's what you would want to do. Especially since Pigg replaced this laser with a wall and then sold it. He's just sold it, bought a wall, and come all the way back. So he's just wasted that whole trip going back and forth. And in that time, I've managed to get my top and bottom set up. So it's going to be pretty tricky for Pigg to come back now. Again, he'll want to connect to base, get enough energy, and super. You notice here, I've just replaced the spot here with a wall that got destroyed. And instead of me trying to organize this all nicely straight away, I'm actually waiting. Because if I try and maneuver all this and I don't do it correctly, or if I leave a hole somewhere here, Pigg could just come in and place a wall, which would just disrupt everything that I've done, all my progress, or he could trade with something I have in center, which wouldn't be good. So it's fine to just wait a second. This actually isn't wasting energy because it's just a gen and a laser together. So I can wait until Pigg goes and does something else, or I can just move it up one spot, wait a second, and then move it up my second spot. So there I've safely rearranged and won these spots, and now I've won mid. So now I've got my 2 gens. Now normally you would bring in another laser, you'd either put it up here or down here, and then you would just continue your development, connect to base, and super one of the sides. The reason why you want to put a laser basically as far forward as possible is because you start taking your opponent's space. What we used to do is we used to just connect it to a gen right next to it, so that if the front gets destroyed, the back will still fire. But we've found it's actually better to push it forward because that reduces the chance of the front actually getting destroyed in the first place. In this case, Pigg again still wants to continue development, so they want to put 2 more walls in here. And now they pretty much want to super mid. Because they've got their 2 lasers here and I'm not supering anything, they can just leave top and bottom and they need to win back mid. They have plenty of energy to do so. You can basically super if you've got just 10 energy, that's still safe. Now you'll notice that they've got a laser in here, which could be useful, but right now it's basically just going to take damage and get destroyed. So again, they want to super mid. Again, not much point of them going for my base damage, because for starters I can just block it, and second of all they aren't actually dealing with the biggest threat, which is mid. Granted, I haven't put a second laser in here, just to give them a bit of a chance to come back, but you'll notice that they still haven't supered mid. And again, it's kind of hard without experience and practice to actually know exactly what you need to do at one particular times, but that's why you play a bit, you watch some videos, and you improve. Now again, because I actually have complete mid, I would want to put a laser up here and a laser down here to continue this pressure. Second thing that I also want to say is it's better to have 3 lasers in mid to attack every single lane instead of actually putting a super here. And the reason being is that a super can really be stopped by just walling. And they still have these 2 lanes that they can walk and they can use, and their base isn't being attacked as well. So it's better to have 3 lasers here rather than a super. Now their super, again, that they've got in this top mid lane doesn't really do anything, because I can just wall it, and you can see it's actually wasting energy for them. So you'll also notice in this whole time, Pigg actually hasn't been gaining energy. So while they've been trying to attack and destroy some things, they aren't actually making progress at all. And they've actually lost some energy from since this attack started to be. So I really needed to super mid, and now you'll see why. So I finally brought in my 2 other lasers, which is what you should do. And now you would normally want to go and attack either top or bottom lane. But at this point, there's no reason why you can't also go for some extra offense. Now, the only thing that Pigg could do is super mid. So what I'm actually doing is using these extra energy that I have at the back to destroy any connections that Pigg would have to base to make the super. So basically the game's far lost already. Even if I have complete mid, the game's usually lost at that point. Unfortunately, Pigg can't super now, even though they have lots of energy, because the connections to base are really disrupted. The only thing that they could do is try and super along, say, this lane or this lane to destroy this one, and then super 1 lane up, destroy this, and then super again to destroy mid. Slowly work your way towards mid so that your connection's still safe. What you'll notice I'm actually doing here is what we call snaking. Now, it's more prominent in mid, and what we actually do is we take the row of lasers that we have here all together. Well, at least one of the spots, but usually all 3 spots are destroyed. You go in, get a wall, and then you push all 3 of these lasers forward 1 spot, and then replace the wall behind it. And again, this is why we put all the lasers as far forward as possible, rather than just connecting them to their own gens. And the reason why we call it snaking is you can see we're kind of extending our snake, or a three-headed snake, or hydra if you want to call it that. But the other analogy is that we're actually constricting the space that your opponent has. Not only are they not able to place blocks as easily, but that means that they're not able to counter. Because if they were to put a super, they would have these 2 blocks for a super, and then they'd have to connect to base. And that only gives them one spot right in front of their base to actually buy and sell things. And now I've actually moved it forward one more space. If they were to now use a super, they would take up the 2 spots directly in front of their base, so they wouldn't actually be able to buy anything. Again, the game's pretty much lost, and it was lost ages ago, but all still instructive. And you'll notice here, I can still move them one more forward. Now, once this laser is here and is actually being powered, there is nothing you can do to destroy it. Because you've only got one more spot here, which you could put a laser, but a laser will only oppose a laser. So there's actually no room for a super here, which is why if your opponent gets to this spot, then there's nothing you can do about it. That's why you pretty much have to prevent this at all costs. The other way that you can use snaking to your advantage, or another cheese strat, is that if you manage to destroy an opponent's home gen, either this one or this one, you can actually put a laser and a gen here and just keep these 2 in isolation, and your opponent will never be able to win them. Same way that if a laser is this far forward, there's no room for a super behind it. And this is the last match. Now this opening that we're doing, you can always just practice it against a bot, or you can even practice it just in your own local lobby. Basically just this setup now, where you're getting these walls in, you can just practice this. And it's really important to get each of these movements down pat and understand your controls, because even if you're a little bit behind in the opening, your opponent can take advantage, just like this. Now, granted, Pigg did put this wall in mid rather than taking this spot, but if they were, say, 1 block slower, if they were just now coming in with their second wall, and I was to get here first, I've basically won bottom lane. So at this point, I'm already at an advantage, and I've already got my top gen ready to go. The other thing is, you'll notice Pigg tried to get a gen in here to try and do something with it, but your gens actually cost 5 energy, and they're really easy to destroy. So they have actually just wasted 5 energy trying to do something down bottom. So it would have been better for them to either go top or mid, because that's where I didn't have an advantage, and try and get an advantage. Basically, the way you come back in this game is to either take what your opponent doesn't have, or successfully counter them in some particular way. You'll notice here that I have actually also left mid, and again, Pigg would want to immediately try and come in and win this space, especially since he has 3 blocks just floating around that he could easily use to fill these spots. Now, I am leaving it on purpose to try and give Pigg a bit of an advantage here. But yeah, in your game, definitely want to make sure you save just these 2 spots. The mid spot doesn't matter too much, same with top and bottom lane, but these spots are really important. The other thing is, Pigg decided to push his laser and gen forward, which is fine, to try and keep the offense up. But when he moved these forward, I could have came in and put blocks at the back. So again, better to just replace these with walls and come in and move it later, like I set up on the right side in an earlier match. So again, here, there are now 3 empty spots, and Pigg's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks here. So better to fill it and then replace it rather than replace it straight away. So here I'm trying to tell Pigg that you want to make sure you block this spot as well. For 2 reasons. Like I said before, you want to have your lasers as far forward as possible. And if this wasn't connected to the back gen, you wouldn't be able to do that. And you could argue that, well, okay, we'll just go back to putting a laser connected to this gen. Now, yeah, you could, but again, 2 things. You're actually also giving me more space in front of this back laser to protect it with walls, so I have more room to move around. And if I ever super mid back at any point, which is what I should do, especially since I have a whole base of energy, I would only have to destroy 2 blocks, and I'd already get this for free. Especially since there would be no wall there, that would be really bad as well. So Pigg's finally brought in a laser, and they've moved it 1 forward, so that's perfect. Now, you could push forward even more, and that would be okay. But typically, if you've won this much mid, this is all you need. After that, you would want to super either top or bottom. And in this case, I would suggest for them to super bottom, because that's where I have basically my only advantage at this point in the game. So if they take my only advantage, then it'll be very hard for me to come back. Again, this is really good. You'll see Pigg moved 1 wall forward to try and get it set, but he didn't have a gen ready to replace this spot. So he just puts his laser here, comes with a gen, and then replaces it. And this is good. He's got 2 lasers, and he should put this laser down here. Again, he's decided to go for a super. Like I said before, a super is not good for offense because I could just wall it. Additionally, they actually haven't put the super in mid. And the reason why this is very bad, you'll see in a second. Again, they've got a full base, or both of us have a full base of energy, so we would want to be supering somewhere. And this is why not putting a super in mid, or just a laser in mid, is really bad. Because I can just put a laser here, and it automatically attacks their gen, and as soon as his gen's dead, the super's dead. So again, full base of energy, so I'd want to be supering somewhere. The other thing is, because Pigg has already won mid, you actually don't need to connect it to base anymore. Because it's not getting energy, and it's not sending energy. So it's better to just leave it disconnected to give you space to move around. And you also want to make sure that it's not wasting extra energy. Because he's got a 3rd laser here, but he doesn't have a 3rd gen spot. So it's better to just leave 2 lasers there, rather than try and use 3. And this is actually good instruction for how to defend against a triple mid laser whilst you're getting ready to set up a super. You can block the outer 2 lasers straight away, and you want to use 2 walls so that when the front one gets destroyed, you can still go in and replace it and you don't get hit behind it at all. With mid, because you actually can't get in to place this one, because you would get hit from the sides and you get hit from the front, you just have to move that back 1 spot. And when this gets destroyed, this is also another reason why you want 2 blocks here, so that you can move them in to replace this wall, and then you would bring another one in to replace where it was. Again, Pigg would probably want to disconnect mid from base so he has some room. Use a super to take out bottom because that's my only advantage so far, and then push mid more. And if you're in my position, you would want to be supering somewhere, which I am not, for one reason or another. But again, you can notice that I'm actually really tight for room here, because all these lasers are so far forward, there's a bunch of blocks here, and I'm trying to also protect against these. You'll notice here that I'm actually bringing a laser in to attack this top one, because I've noticed that they have disconnected from their base, and there's only 2 gens here. So this top laser isn't actually firing at all. So Pigg's actually managed to bring in an extra gen now, and still keep the other 2 lasers here. So all they would have to do is bring in another laser, and they'd be all good. And if you move it back, that's fine. Again, Pigg really wants to super either top or bottom, and bottom is preferred. He's already won mid, so he doesn't have to do anything more with there. You'll see now I'm starting to super, and I am deciding to connect to bottom, because that's where I have my advantage, so that's where it's strongest. And I'm not just going for mid straight away, because the connection would be pretty weak with this laser. So instead, I'll destroy this laser, and then I'll go and destroy mid. And you'll notice I'm not using it for offense, and, well, that's why it's hard when you don't have any room to try and maneuver and super. So you want to try and super mid back as soon as your opponent wins it, so that you don't get to this stage where you're trying to defend the whole time against 3 lasers, and your opponent would just have all the time and the space in the world to win bottom lane, win top lane, and then win the game. So I hope that was informative. Bit of a long video, but always good to go over these little intricacies. These videos always do well, and it's great for new players to come in and get a bit of feedback from other players and improve on a couple of little pointers of their match. So thanks for watching, take care, and I'll talk to you on the next one.